Hi, I'm Jeff Ajik. I'm the owner and founder of Action Continuous Improvement and Continuous Improvement Central. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about the Countermeasure Sheet as a project type. So there's a whole series now of project types, and these are the continuous improvement oriented project types that are kind of in your arsenal of tools that you can use to make improvements. And there's another video that kind of shows these four in relationship to each other. You can watch the ones, these other ones all have videos on it, but right now we're in this Countermeasure Sheet here. So that's where it fits in into these four tools here. So just for context, let me go ahead and pull up a quick picture of the Countermeasure Sheet. So this is what we're talking about. This isn't a video on how to use the form. It's really about when to use the project. So I'm going to go back to this page here. This is a poster from our passive learning series. So take a look in the links down below if you want to get this poster to be able to post in your work area. It is available to do that. But let me go ahead and dive into talking about what a continuous improvement, a countermeasure sheet is. So this is really a step above the just do it project. So this is still going to be often a small project that a single person is going to work on, but it needs a little bit more sophistication in the analysis. It could be used as like an A3 light. A3 is a much more complex tool for bigger projects that cross kind of department boundaries and have a lot of people involved. The countermeasure sheet is a much smaller approach to that. You'll also use countermeasure sheets as a tool for your misses on your KPI bowlers and your PD bowlers. So if you do miss on your target, you do need to do a countermeasure sheet to show that you have it under control during your operations review. So it's a little bit different use for it, but it's the same principle, is that this is used for a project that doesn't necessarily need a full team associated with it. You may get help on it, but often it's just a couple people working on this. And in many cases, it's just the leader in a work area. They manage it, and then they bring in other people to do the steps of it and assign tasks out as needed. So this can be a wide variety of time. It could be something that you can just do fairly quickly, but you want to have the analysis on it, or it could be something that takes a little bit longer, especially if there's lead time in working with your support teams. If you have something IT that's needed, or if you need a tool developed for it or something like that, if you have to go to tooling or any other group maintenance facilities, you may need to take a little bit more time. The impact on this is generally going to be small to moderate because it is a little bit more intricate than just a daily improvement or a JIT improvement project. It's going to be a little bit higher, but you do still try and focus this on low risk stuff. When it gets to be higher risk, you do want to have a little bit more structure to it, and you'll generally gravitate toward the A3 if it is a strategic or a higher risk project. And you do need to have some fairly good problem solving skills and skills in the particular tools that are required to solve this. Now, the thing is, though, because this is really a project management tool, if you don't have specific knowledge on all of the different things that you come up with as solutions, you can task it out to other people and have other people help you with certain things. So if you're not great at poka-yoke, you can find somebody who is, and that's mistake proofing. And then you get them to do that part of it. So in a great continuous improvement organization, you help each other out a lot more, and you kind of recognize that if you help other people, they help you. And you also create a more robust capability in your support team. So your tooling team is going to know that they're going to be involved in continuous improvement more. Your facilities knows that they may have to make some changes and put drops in and things like that as people make changes. So you do get a lot better support in a continuous improvement organization, which makes it easier to run these projects. So what are they best for? Well, they're best when there's a recurring problem that isn't going away that you've tried other things with, or if there's not a real detailed type of underlying things, or if it doesn't look like a real complicated project. You still want to do your root cause analysis, but if generally you're going to be able to figure it out locally rather than need to go do a lot of sophisticated data collection and get other teams involved in trying to track down the problem, you can do that. So you also don't want to do anything that's going to have big disruptions to your process. If you have to shut things down, it does need a lot more coordination, and you need to get your higher ups more involved to figure out how you're going to do that. So how do you use it? Well, we get some steps here. Define the problem, find the root cause, which is typical of any problem solving. The countermeasures. The big key on a countermeasure sheet is the countermeasure calculus, and that means that when you have the problem, and a problem I define as a gap between reality and expectations. So whatever your current condition is and your goals, that is the gap. That's the reality and expectations. And you might know that it's 7. And if your countermeasures come up to 4, you don't have a good countermeasure in place. So either you have to adjust your goal and reduce your expectations, or you have to get some more countermeasures put into there. Now, a countermeasure is kind of a line item, so there's a cascading effect on that. So just because you put a line item that says this is your countermeasure, there's work that goes into it, and planning that has to be done to make sure those countermeasures are completed. And that's the implementation step here. Then once you're done, you want to verify your results, make sure you've actually completed that countermeasure calculus, and then you want to standardize and prevent any kind of recurrence. So that's the basic gist of it. If you look over here at what success looks like, the big one is that the issue is resolved and doesn't return. And that's kind of your measure of success for most projects, but specifically for countermeasures, because you are, trying to work on this alone, you generally, not necessarily alone, but with smaller teams. And one of the things you'll find is that there's an optimum point where if you have too many people involved in problem solving, it gets chaotic. If you have too few, you don't have enough ideas. So there is kind of somewhere in the 5 to 7 people working on a problem or project, they come up with some better ideas than bigger teams and smaller teams. So, if they're in place and working, you've had some success. And again, here's your flow of projects. Now, I will say before I leave here, likes and subscribes really help me out. The likes will let me know what I'm hitting a chord with here and that I'm doing something valuable for you. Subscribes makes sure that you don't miss anything. And, if you're interested in this series here, there's 2 more coming after this. So, make sure that you subscribe and get your notifications so you don't miss out on anything. But it also helps me be found. So if it looks like the video is appealing to people, it sends it out in front of more people on the algorithm. So it does really help me out a lot. So if you like it, it doesn't take much effort to click that like button. So that's all I got to say here. Hope you have a good day. I'm Jeff Hajek. That's all. Thanks.